When your tummy is rumbling and you're feeling low, it's the low blood sugar blues. We all should know. Woke up and feeling cranky. Tears begin to flow. Nothing seems to cheer me. Nowhere good to go. Everything's upsetting. Tears in my eyes. Low blood sugar blues. Can't you hear my cry? Grab a little snack, maybe fruit or cheese. It'll bring you back. Put your mind at ease. Low blood sugar blues, they're not here to stay. Eat a little something, they'll be on their way. Feeling kind of sleepy, weepy, in my heart. Hunger makes me grumpy. Tears just start. Mom says, have some raisins or a little treat. Yes, Sue, I'll stop the crying and feel my best. So sweet, yeah. Grab a little snack, maybe fruit or cheese. It'll bring you back. Put your mind at ease. Low blood sugar blues, they're not here to stay. Eat a little something, they'll be on their way. Remember, little buddy, keep your energy high. Snacks are there to help you dry those tears. Don't cry. Grab a little snack. Yeah, maybe just fruit or cheese. It'll bring you back. Put your mind at ease. Low blood sugar blues, they're not here to stay. Eat a little something, they'll be on their way. Wow, you're feeling better. Ready for some fun. Low blood sugar blues, they're on the run. I'm feeling low. It's the low blood sugar blues. We all should know.
Approaches are, that's where the alignment is between Grim and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Grim?
A terrible spell, and part of that spell, the humans have the campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So like, the television engages that, and like that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So like those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like their audience. And like if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall that behind which you are audience and not a human. So
okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus, @GrimGrizz, hashtag break the fourth wall.
So like you do like break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
break the fourth wall a little bit.
you really helped me break the fourth wall. Like, it's just people.
Good poetry is definitely it's definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can. All right, here we are. It is the Friday after Synod. I tried getting a few people on, but it's hard for people to realize that Synod is Ryan. So I chatted with Ryan via email. You saw Ryan a number of times at Synod. He's a minister of Grace CRC in Classes Grand Rapids East. He's active on Voices, as is Paul Verhoof. Both of them, I thought, did a wonderful job at Synod. I thought Derek Buikema, the president, and the vice chair, they both did a wonderful job too. I know that in the Christian Reformed Church right now, in certain corners of the Christian Reformed Church, there's celebration or relief. In other corners, there's a lot of fear and anger. If you go into social media, it's just, depending on what social media corners of the Christian Reformed Church there's some of them are just seething and angry, and others are relieved. So it's a big deal. But there's, again, there's a weirdness in the CRC being having the attention of this online community. I was listening to Mo. Mo did a video this morning, or it was posted. He did a live stream and had a bunch of the usual suspects in. Let's see. I'll just share the screen. Come on up there. There we go. Mo had with, of course, a bunch of the Chicago people. Those who don't know, Pastor Mo is a Christian Reformed minister, and he's a church planter in Chicago. Pat is in preparation to be a Christian Reformed minister. Of course, you probably know Lance and Hank and Sam. They're regulars, and I think Mo made some really important points that the CRC has been in some way sort of moderated by what's been happening over the last 30 years. A number of people have left. A lot of the sort of the hardcore CRC right left during the Women in Office wars. Now we're going to see some of the harder core CRC left leave over the same-sex marriage. And I think Mo and his wife, Mo's talked about his conversation with his wife. They talked about the fact that the CRC is very much a middle America thing. And so even though right now the CRC left is crying that Abide is some evil cabal that has ruined their denomination, taken it over, as I noted in the video that I released yesterday, I tried to have Cedric on, but Cedric couldn't make it. Cedric wasn't a synodical delegate, but he was making videos for Abide. And in many ways, Cedric and many of the other people that you saw on the floor who stood up that said, hey, I came to the Christian Reformed Church because I wanted a confessionally reformed church. And part of where the CRC has sort of made its way in the latter part of the 20th century is that a little bit of that DNA of Dutch tolerance and openness has been in the denomination. And so I've told the story before of there was a PCA minister in the 70s who was, I'll let you in soon, Jacob. There was a PCA minister in the 70s who was, oh, I'm sorry, he was OPC. That's a more conservative Christian Reformed denomination. And he was praying, and as he was praying, he started praying in tongues. And, he didn't quite know what to do with this. And it reminds me, probably Monday, I'll post the full Chris Green conversation. It's a tremendous conversation. Really looking forward to talking with Chris Green at the Northwestuary, as Grim Grizz calls it, at Olympia CRC in that Nate is putting on. But just like young Chris Green finds himself sort of involuntarily adoring Mary, this OPC minister, which was a secessionist denomination, finds himself speaking in tongues, and he didn't know what to do. He wanted to be conservative reformed, but he needed something less rigid than the OPC, and so he joined the CRC. And I think a lot of moderate people are dealing with that. Now, I know that there's a lot of fear that there's going to be a broader purge. I tend to think that this is going to stick on the same-sex marriage debate. But as Lance said in that same conversation, and as Sam made the point that how are CRC positions supposed to change? And I very much agree with Sam. I think, and in fact, some of the restrictions that were sort of put on this make it harder. And so I think the Christian Reformed Church does need to continue to work with a broader confessional conversation on these issues. But as I often what I do with my videos, after I made the thumbnail and the title, I thought, yeah, that's the right title. This is the burnt wooden shoes millennial takeover of the denomination. And they're sort of bubbling it, and that, okay, we need to use these confessional walls again. And confessions have sort of been used as a flag and as walls. But if you have these confessions as walls and flags, you're also going to need to have gates and doors, and you're going to have to figure those things out. So we're going to talk Synod. And as I've done in the last videos, I have 4 different topics. So first we'll be talking about the burnt wooden shoe millennial takeover. And then we'll be talking about disciplining churches more than disciplining churches more than individuals. And I discussed that in some of my videos. And then we're going to have to talk about discipline without discipleship, because the real issue beneath all of this is catechesis and discipleship. That it's sort of low-hanging fruit to create a goat gate to kick out all the people who might look wobbly on traditional marriage. But your real issues are going to be discipleship, not discipline, because the truth is that by the time usually you get to church discipline, it's because your discipleship program has failed. And that's something that the CRC has yet to really come to terms with. And then the 4th point is going to be repentance, salvation, and memes. And maybe we'll let the beast, the legend, Federecci himself in on that conversation. Following just a word about the low blood sugar blues. Dave Barker, who does all that blues stuff, his son said, why don't you sing? He's got grandchildren. Why don't you sing a song about the low blood sugar blues? And they had Chat GPT make the lyrics to it, and Dave put it to music, and he told me about it last Sunday. He told me about it last Sunday, and I thought it was just genius. And now listening to it, I really enjoyed it. So, all right, Jacob Federecci, the strangest synod watcher we probably have. Just amazing. But go ahead, Jacob. Let me have it.
So, number one, I much prefer Cedric's titles to yours. You call me monster. Actually, Judaizing Pharisee was pretty fun. But he calls me a fool. And if somebody else hadn't taken Jacob the Fool, I would have taken that. I have a genuine question, and it's going to sound like a rhetorical question, but it's really not. Why don't the people just go to the RCA? Why is this such a big deal?
That's a great question, and it has everything to do. It has everything to do with the topic. So Grim Grizz isn't going to have to switch on for an intervention, which he probably will do multiple times today. It's again because the CRC is this family. It's really. And the irony again. This is why I keep coming back to that banner in 1980. That was what people don't understand about a denomination like the Christian Reformed Church. This is not the last fight we'll have. There'll be this little breath. And then there'll be a new fight, and we'll go through this all over again. But one of the old fights, of course, in the wake of the civil rights movement was Christian Reformed churches felt very white and very ethnocentric. And it wasn't just whiteness, because, in fact, in many ways, we did better at enfolding non-white people than we did white people because the differences were obvious because of skin color. We had real difficulty enfolding white Americans because we're so darn Dutch and we love our Dutchness. And that's kind of the irony about the racial conversation, is that every time you sort of have to put white or Caucasian into a form, all the Dutch CRCers are like, why isn't there a Dutch form? Why can't I say I'm Dutch? Because I'm not German, and I'm not French, and I'm not English. I'm Dutch. So why does my ethnicity get ghosted because of the paleness of my skin? Why can't I have my culture? And so the CRC has been this thing, and it's not just been a church that's confessional. Confessionality was sort of an excuse for, we must have done something wrong. It's sort of, he's kind of become the virtually not alone police in this corner. But so confessionality was always sort of tied in with ethnicity. And then so in the 70s, we really kind of hammered at that. And it was sort of the CRC left that was like, yeah, we really have to, if we're not enfolding people of color, we are racist. And so that's why this turn is so dramatic, because you've got the plan worked. The left's plan worked. We now have people coming in for our reform distinctiveness. But guess what? They took us at our word and said, yeah, I want to be distinctively reformed. So stop dumping on the thing that you caught me with. That's why I'm here. And so it's in an interesting way, because the CRC left burned the wooden shoes, that people like Cedric came in and said, you told me to come, here I am. And same for the Hispanic churches, African-American churches, Korean churches. So that's the irony here.
You guys really need to go back to the mints. No, I'm serious. I am absolutely serious. Those mints are yes, you guys need to.
Focus.
Focus.
There it is.
That having communion on a weekly basis with those mints, those are the CRC wafers.
I have to say, you need to know who bought me this can. Whoops. He's sitting right here. Federecci, the man, the mystery. And when I say monster, it's a term of endearment, just like fool is a term of it. We do love you, Jacob. As much as you make it hard to love you sometime, we really do. Grim, what did we do wrong, Grizz? What did we do wrong?
I'm bulking on this reputation that I come to police, and I mean, it's nice when you stay on topic, but what I came here today for was I would just like to provide the people that don't really care but want to know what happened view of Synod. Like, so correct me if I'm wrong. Last year they decided, all right, you can't do this anymore.
2 years ago.
And then a bunch of people did it anyway. And then this year they were deciding what they were going to do about the people who did it anyway. Is that accurate? And what happened this year?
Synod 2022 drew a line and said, this denomination is going to believe in traditional marriage, period. Synod 2023 said, we're serious about it. We're giving you a warning, and we're serious about it. And see, part of this goes back to...
No. We're doing a concise version.
Okay. And then Synod 2024 said, you had your warning. Now it's happening.
And what's the it's happening that's happening now?
So basically, Synod 2024, to the degree that can do this, now this is going to be like Trump appeals for the next few years. But Synod 2024 basically put all office bearers that do not affirm the traditional view of marriage into a limited suspension, which means that they cannot be delegated to classis and they cannot be delegated to synod, and was said, in this year, either you make your way out of the denomination or you repent of your position.
So
and if you don't do this after a year, you basically will be disciplined more fully.
Now that Paul put the very, very left-wing position on the board, that was a very skewed way of looking at it.
Okay, Jacob, you watched this closely. What is your summary of this?
Okay, so back in like 2020, early 2020, a bunch of people on the CRC left went, we can't get our way, so we're going to do things we want to do anyway, despite and dare Synod to actually do something about it. So they ordained a lesbian.
Okay, but this year was supposed to be them doing something about it. Did they actually do anything about it?
Yes.
They sent a sternly warned letter. And
No.
This is after 3 years.
No, this is this stuff takes a while.
Exactly. This is why the left
acted
start playing these games, because they're like, they'll never actually do it. They'll never actually, and that's why it's just people getting more and more mad. Is like every single year the left keeps on saying they won't actually do it.
But you don't understand, Jacob. Actually doing it isn't like putting people in prison or taking away their buildings or sending lawyers. Actually doing it is what Synod did.
Actually doing it would be actually doing it.
Well, tell me what actually doing it you're talking about, Jacob.
Before it gets that flared up. So essentially they said, you align yourselves with the Creed or GTFO, and we'll see what get the blank out.
Oh,
right. You
then it
align with
doesn't
the
talk
Creed,
that way, Grizz.
but you align with the creeds or you get out, and then now
You align with the confession or you get out. Yes.
and that plays out how if they
So
do.
now all of the churches that have affirming things on their websites and all of the churches that sent letters of protest and the individuals from their councils, they will get visited by the next level up that says,
So like they're sending Men in Black to all those people.
yes.
Excellent. Okay,
And,
that's what
and
happened.
they sent visitors 2 years ago as well.
Yep.
And they're
But the
gonna
visitors are going to be more stern this time.
exactly.
Well,
All right, so
the
the
visitors now have
churches,
something concrete that is acting. But you're right. This is going to filter down to the classical level, to the local level, and there's going to be all personal conversations all the way through. But Synod basically drew a line and said, and plus by virtue of the vote counts, which were super majorities. I mean, at this point, people, and still I hear a lot of people on the CRC left saying this is they're acting like Trump, ironically. It was fixed. It's fixed. And it's like, it's not fixed. This is the will of the body, and there's no getting away with it, getting away from it.
So for the summary, folk, in 2024, they suspended the disbelievers of the creed and sent Men in Black.
Something like that, yes.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank
All
you.
right.
You can follow.
Okay, now we've had our intervention from from General Gaius Grimm of the Third LARP and Gresham Protocol, and I guess now we can continue on the topic, which is burnt wooden shoe millennial takeover. So again, also in this thing, you have to see the generational shift, and what you have to I'm eating this darn mint. You have to understand that the reason the CRC is so conservative now is because the children of progressive boomers are no longer in the church. And the children of some of the children, not all, some of the children of millennial conservative boomers are in the church, and they were joined by people, the burnt wooden shoe tribe, who came in looking for the Reformed confessions. And that's why, despite your talk of, okay, well, now they've done this thing, now they're going to get at penal substitutionary atonement. Oh no, they're doubling down on that because this is because of the broader Young Restless and Reformed movement.
Well, and Paul, if the thing that I thought was interesting was the 74% held, 22, 23, and 24. That has to include a decent amount of moderates, Paul, in that number, if you would think about that, right? Yeah. So clearly, I think what it was is that the decision clearly held. What I thought was really interesting is that, and I think this was good, and I think you noted it too, it wasn't like there was some sort of conservative clean sweep across the committees, right? When you think about, like you brought up the salvation issue or some of those other issues, I actually, if I were in the denomination, I think that probably spoke, that would have given me some, I think it'd have been good that not everything just got railroaded through, right? That there actually were some pauses in there. I think, so if I were in the CRC and I were more, let's just say moderate or whatever, I'd say, okay, good, right? Like we're not just kind of going to run roughshod through this. Now I know Jacob wants to you can't just go take the keys to their church tomorrow and kick them out. But let me finish, Jacob. Let me finish. But I think that so here I'm going to correct. So Paul, I'm going to admit that actually having a year to let this settle, 2022 was the shock, 2023 was the anger, 2024 was the acceptance to a certain resignation. And with that, if you looked at Committee 8's reports from last year to this year, there was movement. It was more moderate. And now to those who are truly in defiance, it's a 1-year term. And they've been on the clock for a while. But to those who might be wrestling, it really truly is something much longer, because you do have those congregations that are kind of split down the middle or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of things. So I think what happened here, and So one of the things I pushed back with is I do think that they came to try to meet maybe even the moderates in the middle and do something that was more well thought out. I felt like that. I think the process worked, and I'm actually going to give the CRC kudos in how it worked, Paul.
Yeah, no, I think actually, especially in comparing it to, and we'll have to get to that. I have to start. Oops. I think in many ways, so the CRC and the RCA are very similar. I think the CRC's polity proved itself over the RCA's polity because the RCA basically couldn't adapt to the environmental changes. Now, the argument, the observation that I'm making sociological arguments is true. I can make theological arguments, but the question is, how did the CRC change over the last 30 years? And a really smart voicer, Jason, who lives in Grand Rapids, made the other. I said, how did the CRC get so liberal in the last 30 years? And that's an excellent question, too, to follow up on. But when I look at who's there and who's in Abide, people think that this is just sort of, you've got these two tribes of CRC conservatives and CRC progressives that are just always going like this. No, it's not so simple. Hunter, you're a new face. Let some of these old timers, who are you and why did you jump into this stream?
Hey, Paul, great to meet you. Thanks, and great to be on. I've been very interested in the work you've been doing, tracking what I see as some of the high leverage cultural transformation things going on right now. And so I'm especially interested in this particular stream on the mimetic front. I don't know about this Synod, and I don't necessarily have anything to say right now on that point. But when we get to that point, I mean, I'd love to talk about.
All right, so I'd say come back, especially when we get to the last half hour here, when we get to memes, because that whole, when I look at the internet with the fight over Sola Scriptura is kind of a meme. It's not really a doctrine. It's not really thought out. Sam, I thought Mo's live stream was excellent because Sam always brings just brilliant. Sam is so scary as a Unitarian. I wish he was a Trinitarian because it would just, help me be better. But Unitarians must emerge because somehow somebody's got to give a fair shake to the Jews and the Muslims, which Sam does because they're all Unitarian together. But no, these. And then when I saw this salvation issue thing arise, because salvation issue was a progressive meme that was weaponized to attack the traditionalists. And part of the thing that happens with memes is they often get turned around, like queer has been turned and Christian nationalism has sort of been turned. And so in that sense, the salvation thing was getting turned. And I think, myself and a number of others that no, this is not the way we want to have a theological conversation simply with memes. So
Tyler made a really good point.
Okay. I'm managing. Is this the point you're here?
Oh, I thought this would have ended up in one of your videos. And when the Alvin Plantka comment was made that I'm more CRC than Alvin Plantka, did you hear that, Paul? No,
I didn't hear that.
Oh, you didn't? I think are you from Classis? I think it was. Is it Patrick from Classis, Central California?
Was it JP?
Maybe I had that. I thought it was Central California. At any rate.
Patrick Anthony. Did Patrick Anthony make that comment?
I think it might have been Patrick. Yeah. I think that because it's you're in Classis, Central California, right?
I am indeed. I know Patrick.
And so, but there was a point in there that said that I'm more CRC than Alvin Plantka. And then you heard these, and I could just sense it was probably a certain age group. There was an audible groan that came out from the crowd. But I thought that was you. I'll find it and I'll clip it. You need to find it.
Yeah, let's send it to me because I'm gonna have to hear that.
He said I'm not Dutch and I'm more CRC than Alvin.
That's this burnt wooden shoe millennial takeover. That's it right there.
Yeah, see, I thought for sure. I marked that in my mind. I was like, oh, because that is it. You've been talking about this, right? That gets to the heart of this, and that was really at the heart of the frustration, right? But I shouldn't have laughed, but I did laugh because when he said it, and it got awkward. It was an awkward moment, right, in the room. Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah. So Mark is also in my classes now.
Hey, Mark.
But this gets into okay. So now you Orthodox people and you people who love authority like Jacob, this gets into apostolic succession, because the duchies, in a sense, are working a sort of ethnic apostolic succession here.
So
and that's
Ryan, and I forget his name. It's not Struck. It's the other Ryan. Started this by saying Alvin Plantinga made this denomination, and if he's not welcome in our denomination, then we're not the CRC anymore. And so that the response was, if I'm not Dutch and I'm more, if Alvin Plantinga doesn't subscribe to the three forms of unity, then he's not CRC. And
made
so
a very fair point.
that's
a fair point.
That's why the hashtag for my streams has been CRC Synod boot Alvin, because it's like if you're going to be.
And you say you're not a monster. This family is having a crisis. You're studying to be a therapist, and you put out a meme like that.
Boot Alvin? Yes. because it's about ripping off the Band-Aid, Paul.
It's about don't say to yourself that we are sons of Abraham. Can he not make sons of Abraham out of these rocks?
I've said this since the very beginning to you. Just because you were raised in the house of Abraham doesn't mean you don't get kicked out of the house of Abraham.
And Paul, there is an overlap here in Orthodoxy, because not all, but some parishes don't want other folks who aren't part of the ethnic group in the parish, right? They want to have their Greek club. That sounds awful. Now, I was very blessed that the Greek churches I went to were extremely
Speak up, because you have such a crappy mic, Lance.
There we go. So I was very lucky that I went to a couple of Greek churches that were very welcoming. But that, again, these ethnic, are we going to be an ethnic church, or are we going to be an evangelistic church?
Well, and this gets to this, because this gets into the culture so much, because this boomer, the tribe that I am such a part of. So I grew up watching my father read the Reformed Journal, and some of you won't have any idea what that means. But after the Second World War, this cadre of lights in the denomination, Alvin Plantinga, Nicholas Waltersdorf, George Marsden, Richard Mao, these people were these people were what the Christian Reformed looked to and said, these are our bright lights to the world. And so, Patrick, I worry about my brother. He's, to say something like that, it's a lightning rod. The thing about lightning rods is you get struck by lightning. So that's the way this goes. So it's these moments are tells, and I couldn't think of a more mimetically powerful thing than that, because that is it in the two tribes. Because the one tribe wants to say the CRC at its glory can rival the mainline church, and we're going to do this, and we're going to send Alvin Plantinga to Notre Dame, and we're going to send Nicholas Waltersdorf to Yale, and Richard Mao's going to be president of Fuller, and George Marsden is going to be known as the most authoritative historian with respect to American fundamentalism. This is the Christian Reformed Church's mission to the world, and Calvin College was sort of the center of that, and that's what makes this such a difficult thing when But the CRC has always had a significant portion of confessionalists in it. They've always been a sub-tribe of the denomination. And a lot of what we see happening right now is the different sub-tribes are sort of moving around and battling.
Patrick, if you're watching, I did like Patrick over the past couple of synods. When he comes up to the point, when he comes up to the mic, he stays on point. He's very clear. I've liked Patrick. But yeah, that would have been Monday night, maybe? It would have been Monday or Tuesday night.
Wow. I had no idea that was said. It's like, oh.
So now you can understand the reaction that when in that room there was just there were groans from a certain subset.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. Okay, well, it's time to change the topic. I'm going to clear the deck as I usually do. Hunter, I'd say come on in when the topic gets to you. And if you want to talk about memetics, it's probably going to be in the last half hour. But if you want to jump into other topics, you can. So, all right, next topic. Disciplining churches more than individuals. Are you gonna Jacob, are you gonna be here for the entire live stream?
Only if you don't want me to.
You're fine. You're fine. But if you're in, you have to participate. You can't be Andy Cam. That's Andrew is. I don't think me under participating is the problem. That's probably true. You're exactly right. Okay, so I'm going to put you back in here, and anyone who wants to. Okay, so let me set this up. And what am I talking about in terms of this? And I made videos about this as well. Part of what we're dealing with right now is this question of sincerity, authenticity, and prophylicity. But in the church, prophylicity has to do with witness. And so Paul Verhoof, delegate from Alberta, had mentioned, a church sending in a gravamen. But a church can't send in a gravamen. A church can send in an overture. Now, individuals can send overtures too, but churches have identities. And this is where the question of websites is important, because churches start putting affirming statements on websites, and churches put up rainbow flags. And this is where the protest conversation was really important, because they're Protestants. The whole room is full of Protestants. And so you're saying we can't protest? And again, this was alluded to before. After Women in Church office, there were not some, but quite a few conservative churches that said, we disagree with this, and so we want to protest this. And so at many classis meetings, and in fact at the beginnings of synods, there were letters of protest that were written. And these letters of protest, not unlike Better Together, were often sort of copied and pasted. And so when does an individual protest become a movement? And so I think rightly so, the Better Together can look over at conservatives in the denomination and say, we saw a lot of repetition in those protest documents that came to us about women being seated at classis. So there's definitely something about the identity agency of churches in contrast to individuals. So Sam, you jumped in for this one.
I think that one thing that I'm thinking about is sort of, a Vervaekian propositional procedural distinction, which is very relevant to the gay marriage question, because an individual cannot marry a gay couple as far as the CRC is concerned. Maybe they could go be the officiant at their friend's gay wedding, but that's not going to happen inside a CRC church, right? And maybe that is a question in of itself, if perhaps a office bearer was caught having officiated, a gay wedding, maybe there should need to be some discipline for that. But really, for the most part, do you really know in your heart whether or not you think gay couples should get married or not? I mean, that gets down to, do we know what we believe? But we do know if a gay couple can walk down the aisle of a CRC church with the CRC pastor at the front, get married, have their wedding license signed, etc.
Right.
That is something that's easier to pin down. And so I do think that it makes a lot more sense for this to be at the church level than the individual level.
Right. And which is exactly what the Synod did, actually. And said local councils have a great degree of latitude with respect to who they allow to become members. Now, there's 2 points to make with respect to the officiating a gay marriage thing. Number one, when Obergefell came down, the next Synod basically said Christian Reformed ministers are not allowed to officiate over gay weddings. Now, that could be heard in a culture war context, but it was also a legal context, because the Christian Reformed Church knew that if some Christian Reformed churches start performing gay weddings, other Christian Reformed churches that say, that's back during the wedding cake thing, could say, hey, you as a denomination, you can't say it's a matter of conscience for me not to perform this wedding because you're excluding my class. And so what the Christian Reformed Church did basically, and I think it had legal representation to do this, they said, we're going to have the rule that none of this can happen so that churches that don't want to do it won't be subject to wedding cake type lawsuits. The second point in that is the rule in the Christian Reformed Church in the church order is that ministers of the Christian Reformed Church are not, this is long before gay marriage was ever thought about. Christian Reformed ministers are not allowed to officiate weddings that are contrary to the word of God. Wow. Now, there's a huge amount of variety about that. I mean, part of what Stephen...
What about divorce? What about second marriages? What about
second marriages, unequally yoked, Christian, not Christian? Have they been sleeping together? If you look in Christian Reformed ministers, there's a huge variation of people that Christian Reformed Church ministers will and won't marry. But they take it on a case-by-case basis, and usually it's a conscience thing. There's no firm rule. And that's why, in a lot of ways, I sort of agree with Luke. I wish we've had all of this legislation that has been sort of forced on the church by these social issues, and over time, what this does is actually ossify the church and set us up for more of it. And so there's a sense in which keep your rules to a minimum, but of course you still have to organize as a body, so it's tremendously difficult. But yeah, those are real issues.
I just want to also compliment the CRC. I feel like you guys have, part of the reason why you're getting attention from the outside is because you are orderly and trying to deal with a hard issue in a well-mannered way, and you're willing to subject yourself to public scrutiny during the process. And I'm not sure how
voluntary this subject to public scrutiny has been. This is partly my fault.
That's the Dutch influence, Sam.
So,
they're very civilized people.
But I'm trying to give you guys deserve compliments for this, and I think you guys behaved yourselves really well for the most part.
Would that we all be more Dutch?
And that we all appreciate getting to, in some way, weird way, participate or observe whichever we are. I think Jacob has at least crossed the line to participant in some bizarre circumstance of history. But, so I just think you guys deserve some compliments as a denomination for how this went.
So people ask me why I'm so interested in the CRC Synod. And I've tried to make it very clear. One of the reasons is because I think if the CRC can't handle this well, I don't think anybody can.
Well, that's the closest it looks like when Jacob compliments people. That's as close as you ever get.
I received that, Jacob. Thank you. I take that as a very high compliment. And we are. It is. And again, Cedric said this well the other night, but he didn't grow up in it like many of us. I mean, I know people complain that Rita cried and all that stuff, and I think that's total bullshit. I think Rita was what Rita brought to the floor of Synod is this familial, and what Patrick with that quote blows my mind. But it's, that's where these memes are so powerful. So
Paul, also Rita is the person who's behind advocating for the CRC Canada to break off from the CRC.
Not the person behind. There are a group of people.
A person behind.
Yeah, a person. Okay, we got to let Mark in. Mark, you jumped in.
Yeah, a couple. I'm not sure which direction to take it. I'm going to say
the topic
first,
is discipline.
No, I know that's the thing. I'm going to address the topic. That's disciplining the churches. So
otherwise, it's
disciplining the churches. No. But there's two approaches to take. One, I guess the first, succinctly to say it. First question is, what this process of disciplining or developing a disciplinary process in the CRC, how do you think that's affected your witness in the world, Paul, as a denomination? Are any new Christians going to be made? Any new converts? Are going to baptize new adult converts into the CRC as a result of this?
Yes.
So people, this is but
the other way was probably true too.
No, I don't think so.
Well, but my answer to your question is
you think it's strengthened? Okay, very well.
Yes. Oh, it's because
and that's, I want to point out that this is a surprise to Mark, and not just Mark, but a lot of the elites in the Grand Rapids East is thinking exactly. This is why we love Mark right now. Mark is one of the people who's saying the things that they would be saying if they were willing to talk, which they're not.
Well, and this brings me to my second approach to this subject. Is I went back to 1 Corinthians 6, and particularly verse 7 jumps out to me. Although keep in mind, Paul is talking, the context that Paul's talking about is lawsuits in Roman courts between Christians. But this is the CRC. What we're seeing happen is activists are appealing to legalistic processes and bringing them into the church. And it's just in verse 7. The very fact that you have lawsuits among you means you have been completely defeated already. Why not rather be wronged? Why not rather be cheated? And this is my word. I don't want Jacob to hear this particularly. I want both sides to hear that message. The activists on the left and the right need to hear, why not rather be cheated? Because what we're about is the building of community and church, and the church in relationship with each other, with the full knowledge that we are, all of us, none of us are good. No, not one, right? Romans 7, your favorite chapter, Jacob.
This is and honestly, you're getting to the point, which I was going to bring up on this. The difference between individuals and churches. Like, Mark is being incredibly Protestant, God love him.
Oh,
and the Protestant way is, why? Let's deal individuals. And the difference is, are you treating churches as if they're just individuals? And they're not. They're institutions.
Okay, but this process that this reform, let's call this a reform that's taken place within the CRC, has diminished the Dutchness of this denomination, has it not?
My preference would have been that we would have never had this fight. That is my preference. And my preference would have been, we had almost an identical fight over women in church office. Before the women in church office, women had a whole lot of liberty in the denomination. And then when the fight started, women who for a long time had been doing a lot of things suddenly were taken out of the positions they were in. And now we have this legal thing. And then we have this aftermath. No, I agree with you, Mark, and that I wish that we had not sort of had this, because and it's interesting then to ask, like, for example, why why are certain institutions shaped the way that they are? So your Pauline quote, Mark, I agree with, but we are here at this point. And so for many years, a lot of CRC moderates had been telling the progressives, don't push this issue, because right now we have a degree of liberty at the local level to deal with people on an individual basis. It is done perfectly? By no means. It isn't. But at least we have a degree of liberty. And, to me, again, when Dan Winowski went to All One Body, went to their meeting at Eastern Avenue Church, and on stage they said, we don't have a chance of getting this through the front door in terms of a synodical vote. So we have to use the judicial path, which was used in the RCA, which was, let's implement this and dare them to discipline us. And it's like, please don't, because I don't want to discipline you. I want there to be freedom. I want there to have individuals and to be able to deal with people on an individual personal basis. And that was taken away. And now I think you're right, Mark. I think the Christian Reformed Church is poorer because of what we've done. I agree with you.
Anthony said this is not a reform, it is a reaction. And he's correct.
So CW has left this little corner for 5 years. And but I want to acknowledge the super chat, because in the past I have failed to. And I guess I failed to acknowledge CW's super chat when he was in the corner, because it was a family thing. And now that he is no longer in the corner, but still in the live stream, the institution is something the church does, not something it is. Oh, that's a strong point, CW. That's a strong point.
That's a $50 point. But I'm wondering,
point.
But my question is, does his wife see his bank statements? My gosh, CW.
Thank you, CW, for your generosity.
Text me and I'll make the point for you for free.
I'm really no. Don't do that. No, CW. I'm sorry he's left the corner, and I'm super happy he's still in the live stream. So,
my child.
We do love CW. So, here's a question from Sam. No, I gotta let I'm gonna start. Hopefully, I can get back to it. Doesn't mean I can. This live stream moves so fast. Micah, you came in. What say you?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I come from a more non-denominational kind of background. So like this kind of changes a lot of how discipline works, just in general. When I joined the church that I'm at now, I remember talking to my pastor about, there's a passage that talks about if somebody wrongs you, here's the steps to take. And one point he said to me was that in our modern world, where there's like 5 churches per town, if you try to discipline somebody, they might just leave and go somewhere where they fit better.
Yep, that's exactly what happens.
And is there so is the Dutchness what is keeping this group together entirely?
Entirely? No, that's overstating it. But yes, so what your pastor point said is exactly right. And generally speaking, what happens is if someone begins to think that the church is going to say something negative about them, they flee. That's harder to do in a family when there are strong ties, and that's what the Christian Reformed Church has. There was one situation, like most of the time, this is where when we get into discipline and discipling, by the time you actually get to discipline, you know that your discipleship has failed. So there was many times in this church when we had one episode in this church that could have killed the church. And if not for the maturity of the boomers at that point, there was I don't want to go into details because the church is way too small, but there was a situation that could very well have killed this church about 20 years ago. And if not for the maturity of the people, it would have. And it was something in the realm of this, not exactly, it was not same-sex related, but it was sexually related. And, the kind of, all I wanted for the congregation and for the leaders of a particular little subgroup of the church and the ministry of the group was to just have a conversation about this. That's all I asked. But even just the moment that someone feared they might be a stigma about the decisions that they made in their life with respect to sex and romance, they fled, and a whole bunch of people just blew up. And it was, we lost people in this church, and we are still paying for those losses now, because we lost the few people of a certain generation and they're no longer here. And it's so painful. I compare that to another instance in the church. It was not a sexual instance, but it was an instance of someone that needed a confrontation. And it actually was a confrontation it was an alcoholic. And it was someone that was an alcoholic and had been an alcoholic in this church for a long time. And a lot of people knew it, because when I got to this church, people were telling me stories about how, yeah, I met him at a church ball game and he had alcohol on his breath. But because of the strong ties of the CRC, I basically could go into his home and tell him, this is what you need to do. And if you don't do this, you will be under discipline. And he went to AA, just one visit. So that's where, the CRC in some ways felt embarrassed about its Dutchness, but that Dutchness and familial quality, that's what the body of Christ is supposed to have. And when those ties are strong, then not only does discipleship work, but discipline can also work. Because the thought of being exiled from my family is so painful. Maybe now I'll listen, and maybe we'll have a conversation, and maybe we'll come to a compromise, or maybe something will happen. But that's what gives true discipline its heart. And because we no longer have the ties we had, discipline can't work. And so that's why, when we get into the next topic, if you don't have discipleship and community, the reason there's no longer church discipline is because church doesn't have the ties that bind, that afford the really hard conversations.
Lloyd made the exact same point in the comments.
Yeah.
So is it possible, Paul, that all this work that's been done to build a more robust disciplinary process may actually turn out to weaken your ability to discipline in the church?
Yes. Ironically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is where, if a church, the more organic the church is and the more strong they are as a body, the better it functions. And so this is why, in a sense, as with so many things, when the plea went out to burn the wooden shoes, it was coming from a good place, because they said, we're in America now. We shouldn't be racist, but we also should figure out how to be more hospitable to the non-Dutch and not have bumper stickers that say, if you're not Dutch, you're not much. Okay. Can we let that go? Because, some people will just laugh at it. And I've got members of my church who are African-American, and they'll say, I'm more Dutch than those white people over there. And in some ways they're right. But at the same time, we're trying to get the balance right between, male, female, ethnicity, culture, tradition, to embrace the goodness of those things. And when those things bless us, lean into those blessings and not disparage them. It's really hard to get that opponent processing right. And so we almost always fail on one side or another.
Mark Van Dyke made a good comment as well.
Yeah, Mark and Mark, and these are CRC ministers, and And I think, as Mo said in his live stream, what's kind of been happening in the CRC in the big picture is we sort of purged the far right with women in office, and we sort of purged the far left with this one. And so the CRC will continue, I think, to sort of be a moderate, reformed denomination, which is struggling to make its way through this crazy world we're living in. But my hope, let me be clear about this. My hope is that those who are being exiled now, I'd like them, I hope we'll have the TCRC, which is what I'm in. I hope we have the ACRC, which is alongside, and let's have a synodical option. Obviously, the local option didn't work. I don't think the local option would have worked. The classical option is what the RCA tried. That was a disaster. And I think we've got a synodical option. So let's try and figure out how we can continue to stay close to those who are no longer going to be with us, because I think there's things to learn from those churches.
How is this, Paul? Is any of this making it across the pond and being seen? And how is this being viewed in the Netherlands with Dutch Reformed Church churches?
I have no idea. So the Christian Reformed Church is a weaker version of the Dutch Reformed splits can be pretty insane. There was a major split in the Dutch Reformed Church during the Second World War under the Nazi occupation. And a bunch of people were like, are we really going to have another split while we have Nazis ruling us and ripping Jews out of our house? And yes, we will. And it's like, so the Dutch Reformed have their own way of being hardcore and a little crazy. And the American version, just like with a lot of other versions, and the Orthodox are going to discover this, there's something that happens in this pluralistic, warm place in America that intensifies some things and moderates other things. So, Michael, you were on. Micah, did we finish your point?
I think so. I grew up with a very strange way with church discipline, so I'll leave it here, but I might jump in again.
Church discipline is tremendously difficult to do, but just like having a hard conversation in a family is difficult. And what's ironic about our current pluralistic moment, we've actually made difficult conversations harder rather than easier, because we don't have the ties that bind. And we have a situation now where any way of saying, I don't know if that lifestyle choice of yours is the best one. We're such a libertarian culture now that how dare you say I should be a Chicago Cubs fan? Michael, let me give you. I'm gonna flip the deck here in a few minutes to the next topic. You can come back into the next topic too. So, Michael, what did you want to say?
So, some of the things at play strike me as having similarities to people that take on the moniker of progressivism, right? In my experience, having spent a lot of time on that side, to authentically embody the profilicity of progressivism is to bring in the new. Out with the old, to innovate. It's a revolving door. It's revolution without end, right? What happens is like a redefining of maps of meaning. I used to say this, I've said this a couple of times recently, in those circles, it's change the words, change the culture.
Right. And this is, the name of, so the Dutchman who revolted, the Dutchman that the CRC basically points to as our old lights, Bavinck, Kuyper, these guys, the name of their political party? The Anti-Revolutionary Party. Because they looked at the French Revolution and saw that and said, if you just keep embracing the new, you'll not get anywhere. Oh, look, we've got the Andrew cam. Good morning, Andrew. How are you this morning? You eating breakfast? Yeah. Yeah.
Pancakes.
Okay. We got Andrew Cam. Okay, Lance, one last word, and then I'm clearing the deck. And
yeah, you made the point that they didn't ask for outside scrutiny. They ran right to Jake Tapper and CNN last year and went on a national channel to try and point this out. So
a good point.
I think the fact of the matter, I just wanted to make that comment. The other thing that I was posting, I grabbed Kent Hendricks' CRC musings. He had pointed they had a two strategy. One was a legislative approach, which you said they went in and said, hey, we're going to try and come in the back door and force us to kick this out. Now, Kent came back because he was feeling some heat for that, because they're like, oh, no, we weren't trying to do that. They were trying to backtrack that. But the reason why you do that is because then you can't play that we're victims here to a certain extent, right? And so they're trying to change that sort of paradigm. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, I saw you do it in your responses, when you were hopefully exposing CRCs to the conversation on Jacob's channel. What you're preparing them for is this: hey guys, you better be able to be able to sit in a space with Jacob Federici, with an Orthodox priest, with Cedric, with a Unitarian, with Anselman pumping off comments at you left and right. You be able to sit in there and have those sorts of conversations, because those are the conversations we're going to be having. The bubble is burst.
Yep.
Well, okay. Are you saying? Well, I'm one of those people, Lance. Am I not?
You are. You are.
Yeah,
and that's
no.
why.
And I don't think you're necessarily coming out the better for it. You're not looking. I don't think your argument's winning. I'm one person, and I'm not the best voice for that side. I don't think you guys are necessarily coming out as strong as you think you are.
Mark, as much as we love you, we can't keep people with your views in this milieu, because you don't last. Your arguments, I love you.
You create Michael. Okay.
But Mark, I've said multiply, hopefully you've seen the comments. I think you're an extremely valuable member of this little corner. I love CW being in this corner. We need that. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, exactly. But the fact of the matter is, if you're in the TLC and you can't handle the heat in the kitchen, you're not a good person.
I love the CRC. I mean, the CRC. I love the TLC, and I'm getting to know the Christian Reformed Church. But you guys are creating caricatures of what you imagine the left to be. Michael says he comes from a place. Oh my goodness, Jacob. Yes, and Michael's converted. Michael's converted from.
Mark,
I think
they're in our families.
Good. Listen to them. Embrace them, love them. Michael has converted from a place to Christ. Yes. He's still in transition though. He still thinks he's leaving something. Okay? So he continually references back to where he was. It's Egypt was like this. And he goes back and references. It's becoming a caricature, though. That's not what we are. Okay? The left is not the boogeyman, whatever the left is. And abide in Christ is what he should be focusing on. And that's what I would encourage you all to do. And that was my point, my rather emphatic point this morning on Luke's stream. Was that
stream? And you made a great point. I might clip it because you.
Thank you.
Great.
I got wound up. I woke up. I had no filters. This is the problem. I slept in and I had no filters.
And Mark, I agree with you. That's why when CW had the young gentleman on his channel, I thought it was a great conversation, because I caught myself reacting, and I stopped myself, and I need to start listening. I think, Mark, we're in real agreement here in the TLC. We do need to listen, and we also, I'll tell you the other thing you've seen, folks, here. You've seen people change positions here and open their minds to different things. And so I want to just say that I agree with you, Mark. And Mark, I'm really glad you're here. I really am glad.
Well, and back at you, and let me one sentence.
Mark gets the last word.
One last sentence. I'm going to quote Clara. This is a beautiful space. Let's keep it that way.
All right. Good. All right. I'm going to clear the deck. People are welcome to come back in. Switching topics, discipline without discipleship. part of what I saw was, okay, Synod is re-energizing church discipline in our tradition. That is one of the marks of the church. The preaching of the word, the proper administration of the sacraments, and church discipline. The difficulty is, and we really got going in that already, if you don't have ties that bind sufficient, discipline isn't going to happen. So I'm bringing the camera people back into the room. Steve, this is your first time on this morning. So what say you about discipline without discipleship?
Give me a chance. I got to turn off this other.
All right.
One thing. We used to have a word for this. It was called orthodoxy.
But that word is a little, you're going to have to say a little bit more, Jacob.
Okay. Orthodoxy means right thinking, right? And
right glory.
Right what?
I think
orthodoxy. It's right glory.
Okay, glory. Right glory. But having an actual, okay, this is right, this is wrong, right? And I think what's happening is we're going back towards orthodoxy. And this is something that goes, the pendulum, pendulum not only does swing, but it needs to swing, right? You need periods of liberalization, and you need periods of, okay, this has gotten too much.
Yep, you need a sphincter. You need a sphincter, as Grizz told Chad. David, this is your first time on. I'll give you privilege of the next thought.
Yeah, I think with the idea of discipleship, and this was following some of the ideas, just having talked about it a little bit this morning, the idea that people aren't disciplined themselves. And so it is very, very difficult to not feel like we're just in a sea of hypocrites. And in a situation of hypocrites, it's that you can't discipline me if I know that you can't keep it together yourself. I'm very, very open to hearing from people who can keep it together. And this has been very difficult for me. And I think this is an interest in orthodoxy too. Give me the version of Christianity that makes me fast all the time. This is one of Jacob's complaints, right? Is that Christianity is just trying to make the God of the Bible easy. Where it's like, could we actually be disciplined people where we look at someone and say, that guy would actually pass the marshmallow test? Because a lot of the people who I've heard talk, I just go, you wouldn't last 2 minutes with that marshmallow. That's kind of one of the thoughts that I've kind of been having recently.
Yep, that's true. All right, let's see. Okay, now Sam, next.
As a person who's been subject to multiple church discipline attempts and maneuvers.
And have you run each time?
What? Well,
have you run?
It depends what you mean by run. Another part of this is the procedural propositional thing. Like, I've never been church disciplined for anything that I actually did or any routine behavior. I'm not saying I have my sins. I have my repeated negative patterns as much as anyone does, but that's never been the subject of my church disciplinary hearings.
Right.
And it's like, so can you finger wag me into agreeing with you? Like, and like, how would that even work? And even if I do like crack, like, have I really then suddenly agreed with you? And so this is another weird part of this, is that I feel like the separation between propositions and behavior when it comes to church discipline is something that is confusing. The closest thing that ever happened to me getting disciplined for behavior was for having a YouTube channel. And they accused me of being a false teacher. I'm like, well, which episode of mine was I engaging in false teaching? And it came out that they hadn't listened to any. And so...
Anyway. And David's point is made.
Yes.
All right.
I guess I ran from that one. I said, thank you very much for the intervention, everybody.
But, and part of what is happening here is we are modulating in a big way the 4 Ps and Vervaeke's, and we're trying to figure that out. And this was always sort of an impetus in my wanting to do this, because I would note that you've got some people who are propositionally orthodox, but procedurally in really bad shape. And you got other people who are, they're excellent at love and excellent at living the Christian life, but propositionally, they don't really meet the bar. And these two worlds live together. And I noticed that in the church, like I've said many times, I have been to, as a synodical deputy, I've been to enough hearings where pastors are deposed for sexual sin. I have never once heard a pastor stand up and say, but my doctrine is pure. Even though the line, now it's gotten spelled out more because we're spelling everything out, which I think in the long term bites us. It's just conduct unbecoming. The line was conduct unbecoming, and you were guilty of that. We all knew it. So, but I've never heard someone say, but I'm doctrinally pure.
But has anyone ever stood up and say biblical marriage was much more complicated and I should be allowed a concubine and the church ought to bless that? Has that ever happened?
I've not heard that one either. I would remember that, and it would be interesting.
I was listening to Paul's Sex Lives of the Patriarch series, and this is the lesson I took away from it.
Oh, he's a false teacher on the internet. You must listen to all my videos before you. Everyone who is going to try me must listen to all my videos. It's my nefarious strategy.
One that they think is a false teaching. That would seemingly be a reasonable bar to ask to be crossed.
But you got to find it.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, what say you?
So last I characterized I tried to line out characteristics, the character of the left. Now, while there, we wouldn't touch anything even getting close to what we saw as right. Anything that disagreed with continual progress was essentially fascism, right? So I'll try to characterize the right as I've encountered it a lot, coming back to Christian communities, and there's a hyper orderliness that happens, right? So it's like Roman peace and safety. You better stay in order, and if you don't, genocide, right? It's the same problem with the Nazis. Disgust mechanisms and hyper orderliness come into such a huge play, right? That again, if you fall out of line with this kind of orderliness that we've laid out, there can't be a margin. There can't be wild growings in the corner of the field. We must control every single piece of it. And so while we have an active conversation about the complications of progress and the left, it's certainly not to diminish the very real danger of the far right.
Okay. Let's see. Mark, you haven't said anything on this topic yet.
Well, Jacob mentioned orthodox. Isn't orthodox a Greek word, or derived from a Greek word?
Yes.
Why is this is something I find somewhat puzzling, because I've learned through Jacob that this distinction, Orthodox versus everything else Jewish, is a big deal. Certainly a big deal to you, right, Jacob? Why are you applying a Gentile concept to your called people?
Okay, I wasn't going to bring this up, but this is really interesting. So, in Judaism, we didn't have denominations until Reform Judaism. And yes, that word reform does come from the Reformation. Reform Judaism formed, and Orthodox Judaism formed as a reaction to reform. So in a very real sense, it's actually the Protestant Reformation which created Orthodox Judaism as a denomination.
So
it's fascinating in history.
Wait. So Jacob, it's not because the beards and the black suits made them confused with the Orthodox? No, not at all.
So this is back
well,
to.
How about in the New Testament where it talks about different denominations
They don't
within Judaism,
count, Sam.
and the word
they don't count. Okay, don't
Okay.
you dare bring up any Second Temple groups that, without a doubt, existed, which had ideas identical to the Christian Church. They don't count.
Do you know what the word for denomination is in the New Testament that it uses there? Heresies.
Heresies.
Yeah.
So actually, even
Thank you, Sam.
nowadays we'll say that you can't read it. Resurrection and the restoration of Israel, the ultimate victory of the God of life, John D. Levinson.
This is the book that Yosef told me I had to read.
Yosef is a smart guy. So actually, nowadays, when we say Pharisees, we'll say Rabbinic Judaism derives from the Pharisees, but the term Pharisee, as it's used in the Mishnah, is actually a critical term.
So Bishop Callistos Ware, for those of you in Orthodox circles, probably know him, who did a lot of what some people will call ecumenical work and trying to find bridges. One of the things that he said in one of his speeches that I listened to was something to the effect of, we can't judge the orthodoxy in someone's heart. Which is a very Protestant kind of thing to say in some sense. And what I hoped for, right, having found myself fragile enough to easily fall into extremist groups, is that there was a path, a way, and often orthodoxy, at least in the time then, gets conflated, maybe rightly so, with a way or the way, and that it's an escape hatch. It's a setting aside. It's to be in the world, not of the world.
Paul's bringing in the big money these days. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's my membership section is, well, it's a good thing because when I'm in Italy, that's probably the only videos I'm going to put up are membership videos. So
Wow.
Just because they're all going to be pretty buildings and things like that and personal stories. Steve, did you get your membership?
No, I thought maybe you put me in here now, right when the free.
I can't figure out the memberships either. That's why I can't grab one.
You want to see the reaction?
Anyway. Go get your membership. Well, say your word and get your membership. Well, they're starting to
Yeah,
go.
I'm just gonna get like it the normal way. I don't want to deal with trying to figure that stuff out because I'm baffled and I do understand software.
All right, what do you have to say about discipline versus discipleship, Steve?
So first of all, Christianity shouldn't be spread by the sword. That's my opinion. So in other words, you shouldn't force people. And you made the comment about, like, I don't know, the child molesters or the fornicator priest getting defrocked or something like that. And their defense was never, hey, but my doctrine is sound. And I think that's kind of important. I think a lot of doctrine, as far as I know, is not revealed truth. So we should all humble ourselves when it comes to that stuff. That's my opinion, because, it seems like, I'm not a sola scriptura guy because I know where the scripture came from. But it does seem like a lot of the arguments are based on people's conjecture off of the revealed truth. So this could be total fucking heresy. Maybe you're going to burn me. Maybe any one of you will burn me at the stake for saying this kind of thing. But that's the way I see it today. And I think that's why it's not a good defense to say, but I understand the Trinity better than you do, so you shouldn't kick me out of the church. It's a behavior thing. But again, I also think that it's like there's an invitation to the kingdom of heaven by someone else. And maybe I'm in it. And so I could be looking at other people saying, well, you're not really in the kingdom of heaven because of the way you're acting, which is against the revealed word of God or against what we've all agreed on is at least the proper way to be. So, I'm not kicking you out of the church. You're just not in it. It's your choice. And, that's a tough one, because in the same way, it's like, I know people who are married and they go to visit prostitutes. So they're getting what they want out of the marriage, but it's sort of like in a way, it's not really.
Do their
fair.
spouses know they're visiting prostitutes?
I'm pretty sure this one doesn't. You know, maybe she knows and is ignoring it. In which again, that's like, isn't that like what we're looking at in the CRC? It's like people
She'll
are
know
not being
as soon as.
faithful. Hear me out. They're not being faithful to what the definition and merit and the agreement or the covenant of this group is, and so they want it to be something that it isn't. I'm part of AA. People do this all the time. They come in, they don't follow the steps. They're not interested in the steps. They're not even really interested in recovery. They just want the fellowship. Especially they want the justification from these people, and sometimes they push us and try to fight us into like bending what we are to be like them, and they get mad at us when we don't. And so I just feel like, you know, people should really look at, you know, what it is they're wanting from other people, both like the conservatives, like what are you expecting and wanting from these people, but the liberals should be looking at the conservatives and like, what are you wanting and expecting from these people? You know, who was here
All right.
first?
Yeah, the topic was discipline without discipleship. I'm not sure.
So the discipleship.
So I am chairing this meeting.
Discipleship is the discipline. Discipleship is the discipline. So in other words, it's like this is what we believe. You're in it. Do you believe this or not? Because you know you discipline yourself to fall in accordance with what we're trying to do here. If you don't think it's right, maybe you can try to persuade people, but you know, maybe you should go somewhere else.
But Steve, this goes back to the problem of Jacob using the word orthodox, is that he's not referencing, you're not going back necessarily to actually going back to scripture, going back to the source and developing your beliefs on the source, the group, that is. You're actually reacting to circumstances in the times and innovating and calling that orthodox.
Okay, so
now, and hold on. Let me land. Let me just then. So then, when you're saying we believe this, what you're doing is you're tightening the sphincter. You're keeping people from. I'm using the Grizz image. Sorry, it didn't work. You're going. You see. You can hold. We can. There's a way of holding our beliefs. We can hold them gently, or we can hold them rigidly.
Right. Mark. Okay, so I don't believe we can go back in time, and I'm constantly fighting with the people who are trying to go back in time. And the idea that we can go back in time is silly. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am hoping is that we can continue having this thing of no, just because it's not a free-for-all doesn't mean we're going back in time and things have to be rigid. You have to be able to live with boundaries and actual orthodoxy. That doesn't mean yes, I'm living exactly like I was 2,000 years ago. I shouldn't be on the internet. That is the caricature of the right that you've bought into.
But back to the subject. Discipline without discipleship. We disciple by modeling.
Okay.
And if you want to see what I believe, you can look at my life. My life will my day-to-day life probably looks closer to Paul's. I don't know Sam well enough, but it probably looks closer to Paul's than anyone else on this screen right now.
Probably true.
Okay. And I by all appearances, in fact, I get mistaken for being a conservative Republican because I live a relatively conservative life. I have a family. I've been married for 33 years. That's not to say I'm going to rigidly hang on to it and wave it like a flag and say my lifestyle or no lifestyle, and you're not following Jesus. No, hold on.
You're living.
I hold it
The
gently.
strong man you're trying to destroy is dead.
What?
The strong man.
Let him finish, Jacob. Let him finish.
There is a way of discipling people that is more productive. That brings up. See, I'm an evangelical. I want you to come to Jesus, Jacob. If I could do it today, let's pray. But I rather have relationship with you, sir. I rather have you as a friend than as a convert. And in time, I hope that as we get to know each other, you will see Jesus coming through.
And this is the dynamic we are working with. And I think, Mark, you nailed it very well, because we tended to sort of be in the, okay, let's do the attractional, but there is also a place for the pinch. And so we're trying to modulate that, and we're trying to get that opponent processing right. Christian Baxter, what say you right before the turning of the page here?
I was fired and didn't go to church at the church I was fired from for about 6 months. And then we asked if we could come back to that church. And I was fired for sexual transgression. And so this process of discipline and discipleship was, in this setting, was what was my intentions for coming back to the church? That was asked of me. And my intention was just to bring my family. That's what I told them. That's what I was, because I'd always gone to church. I'd never really brought my family because I was working on Sundays. So, but they were curious about my intentions. But my wife was the one that wanted to go back to the church because that was her community. Ties that bind. I'd worked there since I was 16, and I was 31 when that happened. So I didn't want to go back to church there because I was really embarrassed, and I had to stare everybody in the face every time I walked through those doors. That I had betrayed their trust. But that, so they said, yeah, okay, y'all come back. Christian, we'll set up meetings with you. And we'll start doing meetings with you. So I guess that's the discipleship part. So discipline, fired, discipleship. We're going to meet with you. I think that they scheduled 2 meetings with me. And then it was me going back to church there for 6 years. I wasn't given a lot of discipleship. But the interesting thing about, like, the question, I think that it was David, he said something about discipline of the person, that it was like, so this other part of like practice, because I think that there is a problem, because it goes right back into the propositional. Well, just believe the gospel, that's what we have to give you is the gospel message. And that's a kind of a Protestant thing, but like I had to do things to change, my brain, to change my heart. Yeah. That had gotten me to that place. And one of those things was I went to therapy twice a week for 1.5 years. That was a practice of confession in my life and a practice of truth. But there wasn't really a place for that in the church, in a formal setting in the church that I was a part of.
Christian,
And
can
so
I
that
ask
was
you?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Christian? Did you have figures in your church that turned a blind eye to the infidelity, or
No,
did you think?
I was fired. I was fired immediately.
Okay, so there was no one saw it coming. It just, you did it and you got caught.
Yes.
Okay. Because I feel like especially in large churches, there's a lack of a fatherly presence in these even in any church really of any size, often, not necessarily Paul's, and I mean that sincerely, that for an honest fatherly character to come along and just kind of tap you on the shoulder before you get too neck deep in this stuff, that could help that could have helped possibly prevent. I don't know if there's these lack of relationships, deep relationships that we have in church.
I grew up, that's fine. I was never going to tell the truth.
Yeah. So you were in a phase.
I was never going to tell the truth and I didn't even tell the truth completely after I got caught.
Thank you, Christian.
So it was always going to happen because I couldn't be an honest person.
Okay, thank you,
And
Christian.
it's interesting, Mark, because even this idea of disciple and discipline, what you just described was a very, very affectionate father, where sometimes you need to be dragged to the mat. And like, I was very hard with myself when I first became a Christian. That's how you become disciplined. It sometimes is rough and difficult. It's not just this easy, simple thing. And I know we have an image of love that does not include discipline. It's like someone talks nice to you and you immediately break down crying and you change your ways. But that's sometimes not what people need. They need someone to catch them, call them, and say, this is unacceptable. Use that language, and then you go, oh, I better change. I need to change for there to be life.
The irony is that probably every successful marriage has discipline in it. Spouses call each other on stuff, and usually the other one doesn't like getting called on it. But the bonds of the marriage hold it together. Now, not always. Sometimes it blows apart. Tyler wanted me to talk a little bit about what kind of discipline. Discipline happened all the time in the Dominican Republic. I'm not saying it was necessarily done well. Basically, if you ticked off a pastor, you could be under 3 months of discipline. What was more interesting, and then you couldn't have Lord's Supper for 3 months, and that really only impacted members, people who were official members, which is usually a smaller group. What was more interesting was when, in my zone in the Dominican Republic, there was one pastor who was the most powerful pastor in the zone. He had the smallest church in the zone. In fact, he really didn't kind of have a church. He was sleeping with the wealthiest woman in the zone, and everybody knew it. But this pastor was born in the Dominican Republic instead of Haiti. So he had language skills. He was fluent in Creole and Spanish. He had language skills. He was a very smart guy. He was a very good speaker. And so the zone, which was made up mostly of Haitian pastors that didn't have a lot of those skills, they sort of used him to like be their emissary and do things around that they couldn't. But nobody in the zone had any respect for him because everybody knew he was sleeping with the wealthiest woman in the zone. And it was an open secret. And so really, and when I think back, one of the very few accomplishments that I made in my 6 to 7 years there was I slowly encouraged the Mesa, which was sort of the board of the zone, which was like a classis in the CRC. It was just a regional church. I slowly encouraged the Mesa to have the courage to discipline this guy, because they would keep coming back to me and saying, well, a missionary brought him in, and so you guys should discipline him. But of course, that sort of had their implicit hierarchy about you have the missionary and they have the local pastors, and so the missionary should do it. And in a funny way, this was part of what almost blew up my church with respect to this one discipline case, because people kept coming back to me and saying, well, you're the pastor, you should discipline this person. And then they wanted me to do it, so I would be the scapegoat. So even in these dynamics, there are unhealthy ways so that people can play the victim by having me do it. And what I did with that Mesa was they kept coming to me, say, when will you discipline him? I say, I'm not disciplining him. I have no standing in this church. You all, and this is where I'm trying to teach them Reformed polity, you all are the authority of the church. You should discipline him. And then they did discipline him. And boy, that was hard on them but it was, I think, a critical thing for that. Now, the end of the story, the end of the sad story was that, the Bible talks about turning someone over to Satan. Once he lost status in the church, all of his little things that he made money with went bad. He lost his marriage. And then I heard a few years afterwards that he was basically driving a motoconcho around, which is sort of like being an Uber driver. And then he had an accident and died. So it was a very sad story. I would have loved to have seen him restored. But the nice thing about it is that his son, who was just as smart as him, but actually raised by the guy's wife that he kept cheating on, he was a very moral and good leader. And he actually is kind of an international person now because he got an education. And so these stories are super complicated. All right, I am going to clear the deck again. And People are free to come back in, and I'm switching the topic. See, this is what I do to try and give some kind of structure to these live streams. And I'll introduce the fourth one, which is repentance, salvation, and memes. One of the critical moments of this synod, and I haven't made a full video on it yet, was the conversation about repentance. Because, and so what in this moment you sort of had, well, sort of different competing versions of the Heidelberg Catechism, and then the canons of Dort against the Heidelberg Catechism. And in the video I made today, part of the difficulty that we have is when we talk about repentance, there's sort of in Greek, there's sort of a thing called action sart, which when you learn Greek, you learn that this certain Greek words have the sort of ongoing action, and other Greek words have a sort of momentary fixed done action. And so you have these two natures. And so there's a repentance that needs to be perpetual and continual. And there's a repentance that needs to be poignant and explicit about a state of affairs or an action. And the same thing with discipleship, and the same thing with discipline, and the same thing with sin. There's a sinful condition that we tend to be in. And this is where we get into Mark's idea of, there's a sinful condition that's all around us. We're all sinners. We're all subject to the sinful condition. But then there are moments and things we do that are sins. And in most of the case, we have to sort of keep these two things together. And I was really bothered by the salvation issue because that is sort of used mimetically. And what they wanted to sort of do, I don't know that this was created by the progressives, but I know that Christian nationalism was sort of created by the progressives. And part of the problem in these fights is that, just like in any real war, one side starts using drones and it's effective, and so the other uses them. So you have this arms race. And so we've had these mimetic arms races. And this goes back to the point that Lance was making, that the CRC has to be ready for the mimetic arms race that we are all involved in. And that's hopefully what we can all get ready for. But we have to be there. We have to be really careful when we're talking about. We have to be really careful with our language, and in church especially. So, all right, I'm going to bring those who stayed here. And Hunter, I'm going to give you first talk on this because you mentioned this early. Talk to me about what strikes you in this topic. Or maybe say a little bit about yourself first, because I don't remember seeing you around much.
No, this is our first time meeting. It's good to meet you. Well, I was raised by a Baptist and a Southern Baptist and a Mormon. I served a Mormon mission, and then found philosophy when I got back and went atheist. And then, exactly through the sorts of cultural evolutionary shifts that are like a big hot button thing right now, I'm like getting more and more interested in the space again. I don't know where that ends up, but that's where I am right now.
Nice.
Okay.
I was initially drawn to the subject on memes, but memes is such an incredibly broad thing all by itself. The context you've given makes me think maybe I'll talk a little bit about repentance in this context. The first thing, my thought here is there's probably some answer to this already in official doctrine I don't know about. The Baptists and the Mormons doctrine, like the Orthodoxy was not even on my radar. I thought, okay, it's either the Protestants, the Catholics, or the Mormons. And I was like, okay, the Mormons, because the whole hell thing, hellfire, Southern Baptist, I was like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. But so on the repentance point, my thought here is, because you just mentioned that there are instances of sin, but if we think of sin as missing the mark, let's say relative to what Christ would do in your situation, the thought process I've been coming to is, well, then every moment is sin. It's a quantitative difference, not a qualitative difference.
Right.
And so I wonder if part of the reason we're not, let's say, adaptive enough to the mimetic arms race is that it seems like I was sort of raised with this for sure. We've got this idea that like, if you do it right, you can somehow not sin. And I'm like, no, if you just take for granted every single thing along the way is sin, like there's a certain freedom in that, you know?
That's right. And hence the mocked first point of the canons of Dort in Jacob's Corner the other day. But this is exactly part of the point of the Reformation, that and this gets at what Mark was talking about. And Mark was saying, well, not sin, human frailty. Well, ironically, in Mark missing, there's both limitation or frailty and rebellion. Both of those are in there. And the consequence of that is an important distinction, which is why I thought Synod to wrestle with that point was important, because on one hand, the main point in this issue is, and I think continues to be, the church defining its ideals with respect to, is same-sex marriage Mark missing? Is it accommodation? Or is it rebellion? And we have to sort of figure that out, because and so you work on that. But part of why the debate about salvation issues sort of emerged how it did was balancing those two ideas, where on one hand, everything I do misses the mark. No one is perfect. Hang on, Jacob, hang on.
Even for an instant.
Right, even for an instance, everything I do. Yet, we still need to live in a dynamic economy when some things that I do are sin and need to be addressed as such and need to be out there. In other words, both and this is where Abraham Kuyper comes in, both the antithesis that says white and black, sin and no sin, that's an important part of this universe. Another important part of this universe is common grace, that in fact, we are all living by the grace of God, sustained by him. And these are really complex theological ideas that can get problematic and really hard to manage. But if you just sort of deny them, other difficult things happen as well. So you're very much onto it, Hunter.
I think that there's a temptation in these categories to flatten sin into, or to just exist in the perpetual, like there's brokenness in everything, and so then all sin is just relative, and that's not true.
You hear it all the time. Yep.
But it's not true. Like there are sins that have greater consequences, and even Dante's illustrative of that, and so I think that's with this this topic of the CRC. I mean that's dancing or working around that, but it's this concept, to extrapolate the concept that we're all broken and then it relativizes sin, it's a denial of the reality of a hierarchy of value that we place upon different misconducts.
Yeah. And
so I think that is something that we are going to continue to wrestle with and need to wrestle with, and I think it's something that Catholicism, when they say something against, around mortal sin versus venial sin or whatever the word is, that's a point,
that's going the other way. Right. And one way is to relativize it and make it, everything's sin, so why are you pointing this out? The other problem is to say, well, this was just a small sin, so it's pardonable. And it gets to, before I let Jacob talk, and I want to hear him talk, I just read in my men's group the Cora Datham and Abira passage in Numbers, where are not all holy? That's sort of the similar thing. So go ahead, Jacob, and then we'll let Ben Duncan.
It comes down to the really, really bad idea of salvation, which is you go to heaven or you go to hell. You get cast in the lake of fire, or you're covered in the blood of Jesus.
Another antithesis, right?
It is splitting. It is a psychological problem of a binary that doesn't exist.
Yet you are the most binary person in the corner, Jacob.
Not at all. Not at all. So this is, again, there is this idea that if you make any judgment, right, that if God judges, then it's either to hell or to heaven, which is the antithesis of the 13 principles of faith, which says we have faith of Jewish faith, which says we have faith that God will punish the wicked according to their to their wickedness. And yes, I am non-binary. My Twitter profile says gender non-conforming. I don't conform. You have not noticed I am not gender conforming. And God, it's infinite judgment in infinite mercy means that each person gets precisely what they deserve in the hierarchy. And that's why if you deny hierarchy, you're denying everything.
All right. John Van Donk, Hunter, do you want to do anything before I let the other monster in the room here, John Van Donk, come in?
Comment, yeah.
John got me banned from the CRC channel.
All right, go ahead, Hunter.
So I've heard of something that sounds a little bit like what Christian's talking about, and maybe Jacob. It's called the fallacy of gray, where it's you criticize a black and white view and you argue that there's all these shades of gray, and then you equate all the shades of gray. And you've reduced a two-tone system into a one-tone system, the only possible way to get even more narrow. So you have to acknowledge the spectrum, but you also have to hierarchize it or something. And the only other comment is, Jacob, have you ever taken your Big Five personality test? You know what you score on agreeableness?
10%.
Oh, we've never discussed that
I got
before.
0.
Oh, another 0. This
You
corner
too?
attracts disagreeable people, which I love.
It's gonna be
'Cause I love
fun.
disagreeable
Me,
people.
my dad, and my girlfriend, all 0.
Wow. You and your
Yeah.
girlfriend are both 0. That's going to be.
We broke up.
How many times?
Just the one. Just the one.
All right. John Van Donk, and then we'll let Mark and Christian back, in again. Well, Steve's still at it. Steve just comes and goes, so he's sort of the Andrew Cam. Go ahead, John.
I am not in control. I'm at the whim of Elon Musk and his
All right.
satellites.
All right, go ahead, John.
I would like to preface my remarks by saying that I want to repent in advance for being non-conforming to the topic at hand, because I'm going to go back to discipline and discipling. I don't really care what Paul said. And I couldn't get in fast enough into the previous conversation, so bear with me. I would like to...
Well,
yeah.
John Van Donk has so much privilege in this corner. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it.
Oh, I thought it was
I
gone.
thought it was Hermes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you make me completely lose my train of thought, Paul. I had it all figured out. Hey, so I would like to make the rather sharp distinction between the privilege of leadership and office in the Christian Reformed Church and the privilege of being a member of the Christian Reformed Church in whatever shape or form that takes. I have been in some informal way placed under a kind of discipline in my local church when there was general agreement, and I revealed to the pastor that after I was nominated for an ordainable office, that I could not in good conscience sign the covenant of office bearers. And he said, "That's fine, John. We'll take you off the slate and carry on as you were." Well, what does carry on as you were mean? In my church, and I have to thank Paul to some degree because I often rode that current of being on the edge and really didn't belong and had no place in my local church. Paul reframed that for me, and I'm very grateful for that. As it turns out, I actually have all kinds of opportunity to minister. I am the leader of a retired men's group. I have initiated dinner groups in my church that are now being duplicated. It's called It's Just Dinner. I am part of a discipling group that meets on Sunday morning that has been meeting for a long time, and I have a certain amount of influence there. And recently I have been asked to help form a task force on, wouldn't you know, discipling. What are the processes of discipling at Crosspoint Church? So no, John, we don't want you to be an office bearer in the Christian Reformed Church, because we know things about what you truly believe that doesn't fit with that role. But John, we very much want you to use your gifts and participate in various important processes in our church that help other people grow spiritually, and that have nothing to do with you being a leader or being an official person. And all that happened at Synod this year was all about ordained people. It had nothing to do with whether any same-sex marriage people can practice their spirituality, can practice their gifts, can belong to the church, can participate in Bible studies, small groups, any programs, whatever. The issue is, are you going to teach explicitly the items you disagree about? I think that there is some concern about that. But even that, there were no formal steps taken at Synod to curtail that in any organized fashion. All the discipline mechanisms involved disallowing ordained people to continue in their office if they could not wholeheartedly agree with the covenant of office bearers. So I think that that distinction needs to be underscored and emphasized, because there is a lot of whining going on in the affirming community that they don't allow us to be leaders in the church. Well, then be something else other than a leader. There's feet and legs and arms and eyes and ears in the church. Why do you feel so strongly that you have to be a leader? I could certainly ride that hobby horse. I was once an ordained minister in the Christian Reformed Church. I was a pastor for 10 years. It's not that this is not my church home and that I don't actually belong there at every level. There are some renegade congregations that allow me on the pulpit, but we will not mention any names about that. Anyway, so this is my point. I leave that for your further discussion and reflection if you like, but I'm positing the sharp distinction, the very sharp distinction between membership, even peripheral membership on the edges. Oh yeah, I want to say one more thing about that. So my ministry also has been affirmed. Estuary groups belong at Crosspoint Church. John Van Dunk is the designated leader of the Estuary group at Crosspoint Church. John, you're doing an invaluable ministry. Every church needs to have a church adjacent group where conversations can be held that cannot be held anywhere else. You do that very well. We want you to keep doing that. Thank you for your contribution. Well, so why should I then whine about the fact that I cannot be an ordained person when they give me every other opportunity to majorly contribute to the life of the church? And so I think that there's a lot of whining going on. I think I already said that among the affirmers, that their opportunities are curtailed. Their opportunities are curtailed only in as much as they feel compelled, strongly compelled, to want to be in a leadership role. Get off that horse. Do something else. Sorry.
John, do you consider your pastor and elders to be especially wise? Do you consider yourself to have good leadership locally?
Yes.
That's probably why you are finding yourself in the relationship that you are. You're an exceptional person. They're exceptional people. Not all churches are led by exceptional people. Hence the need for some of us to say, to have what you're calling the affirming position is not necessarily, it's not to fix the well-led churches. It's to help the congregations that maybe are more rigidly led. But Paul is more familiar with the actual politics on the ground. But that would be my response to what you're saying. But thank you.
Here's a question. And this is not on the topic, I guess, but can a rigidly led poor church have exactly the same conclusions and then results as what John's talking about? Like, is it possible for
No, because
a
I've seen them,
loser
Steve.
priest,
I've been in them. I've been in
like
them.
a loser priest, just going with what the denomination has decided? Just the fact that he's kind of a jerk.
I've been in churches. I grew up in
Partnership.
churches that were they thought they had it all right, perfect, and they now no waiver. We're on the straight and narrow path.
Well, if there's no
straight and
hierarchy,
narrow
I guess
path
my question
into dissolution and hell for its members.
Yeah, if there's no
I would like to
hierarchy
point
in the
out-
church, my question can't be answered, because what I'm talking about is like if the church, which is outside of the building, if it has made a decision, and then you have sort of like in the military, if the generals and the Congress have decided to prosecute the war in X way or Y way, and then you got some captain who's a total loser, doesn't mean like your orders and stuff are incorrect. It's just your captain's kind of a brown nosing hierarchy climber. That's what my question is. But I guess if you're like a denomination of one, then it really all you got is your loser pastor in the front, or your good pastor. And
I would like to make
gotta
the
rely on
observation. I would like to make the observation that the church of which I am a member is in fact on the conservative side on a lot of these issues that are being discussed right now, and the pastor would consider himself uncompromising on biblical authority and on same-sex marriage and on all the issues that were decided at the last synodical meeting, and yet he recognizes that. So the real issue is he wants to hold strict to the offices within the church, the ordained offices, and at the same time make a lot of room for other people to continue to express themselves in ministry.
Okay, we're going to have Michael and Sam. Michael, was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah. So if there's chaos brewing and you're trying to bring that back into order with discipline, right? The father shouldn't scold his children too harshly and out of proportion. It seems like that proportionality, right, is on a straight and narrow. It's like it's real fine to try to find exactly what that proportionality of a response to bring something back into order should be. And the closer that it is, this is what I found that I think through Father Stephen DeYoung, largely what the church attempts to do within the Christian Orthodox Church is attempt to proportion discipline to natural reality. And there's parallels to that with some psychological practice, right? In like, oh, okay, you've been divorced. Well, now there's a waiting period where you need to heal, right? And so the discipline should correspond with the natural path of reality of healing that someone needs to go through.
I don't think that's uniquely Orthodox.
No,
I think
no.
It's also the question of, and what Mark was pointing out earlier, which is a point I very much agree with him in, scolding, when we mean, talking harshly to someone, is not always the most effective method of restoring the person. And sometimes natural consequences are good. You let them go. Again, someone here brought up the parable of the prodigal son. It was, in a strange way, it was the father's discipline and the discipline of the whole village to give that son his inheritance and saying, "This is what you want." And I was just reading, and Jacob would probably disagree with me, but it's so interesting when you read the Torah and God and rebellious Israel in the desert. There's sort of a symbolic connection between the punishment and maybe you wouldn't disagree, between the punishment and the charge. For example, there's an irony that the ground opens up and they're taking alive into the earth when they just had recently talked about Egypt as a land flowing with milk and honey, and Moses took them out of this land flowing with milk and honey. It's like, well, they've sort of got the pyramid treatment. Oh, you want to get swallowed up into the afterlife? You can do pyramid, or you can do the earth. Same with when fire breaks out against that group. Are not all holy? Are not all priests? You want to be a priest? You want to go into the fire? Have some fire. How do you like that? So maybe Jacob doesn't disagree with me. So often the penalties fit the crimes, and often the way that God punishes is, oh, so you really want to sleep with everyone? All right, go ahead. I'll talk to you in 10 years to see how well that turned out for you.
Right.
So the basis of the priesthood of all believers is in the priesthood of Christ, and his indwelling presence in the church. It's not in ourselves. So when we speak of when the Protestant, it's taken from 1 Peter, correct? Do I have the right letter from Peter? Yes. And it's a Lutheran point of emphasis, or a reformational point of emphasis. But we have it because of Christ, not because we own it in ourselves. We're not trying to be equal.
Very interesting. I used to not quote this at Christians because it comes from the Talmud and it's not from the Bible, but it's in your Bible, which is all of God's discipline is measure for measure. And in Hebrew, it's attribute for attribute. Midah keneged midah, right? And that's the idea, is that God punishes precisely according to your sin.
Right.
And so there's always a relationship between the punishment and the sin.
Yeah. And that's when I get into like these levels of, anyway, go on. That'll be for videos that I make. Sam, you wanted to come in and say something.
Yeah, just 2 quick points. First of all, this makes me think about the centurion who recognized the authority structures that were in place, and by recognizing the authority was commended for his faith. As a evangelical background, kind of an evangelical mutt, it seems like my conception of authority has had to come into realignment with the way God treats authority. Even things like Paul encouraging us to honor the emperor and things like that. It seems quite radical, I guess, when I read the scriptures, how God has intentionally created hierarchies for a purpose. So there are elders, and I get to be, as the young man, sort of the recipient and try and listen and align and place myself under that. I can't speak to what the elders should be doing. I sort of try and operate at the level that I can operate at. The second point is Hunter and I so random. I know Hunter. We were in the same homeschool debate club from like,
I thought so.
15,
Yeah.
from high school 15 years ago. And I was
I
like,
think your brother was partners with my sister.
yeah. So I just had to say, hey, and like,
Hey, man.
see how you're doing. And that's why.
Been quite a while.
Yeah.
Wow. What state do you guys live in?
Michigan.
It was Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eastern or Western?
Dead center, Midland.
Oh, Midland, Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Dow Chemical.
Yep, that's right.
I'm trying to
No
make
wonder they all
stay
know
in
each other.
Michigan, but I can't.
Yeah. I was on the west side for like 6 years, but now I'm over here in Metro Detroit area. Grew up in the middle of the state. Yeah.
All right. Last thoughts. Mark, I want to give you a chance to talk some more to this if you want it.
I haven't talked.
I've been able to interject, I think, enough. I'm going to stop letting Jacob just misrepresent basic Christian doctrine. So as the free passes are over, and
good.
So
Don't let Jacob get away with this crap. Right at him.
Sometimes it's just, yeah. So, but that's it. I'm done. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all. Jacob, love you.
Mark. So poor Steve, you didn't get a chance. Did you want to say something on the topic?
Yeah, that's what I thought was the structure of this stuff.
Well, that is
Maybe
the
I'm gonna
structure,
join
but
CW
I
Weeks
thought you're
and
the
start
second
sending
Andrew,
money
so I thought
for
you were just going to
indulgences.
brush your teeth and have breakfast. Oh, we got 2
Yeah.
more, so go ahead.
Well, anyway, about repentance, I think maybe repentance should be the first and only topic of this discussion. It seems like I know it's more complicated than this, but it seems like a lot of the issue and the division and the schism and all that is a lack of repentance, meaning I'm the one who is the problem, and I need to change, and I need to humble myself, and I'm speaking from experience. I'm not like been a holy person my whole life and I'm pointing the fingers at all the sinners. I know what sin is now because I've been doing it so well for so long, including deluding myself. And, I go, how many books you can buy and how many societies or groups you can join
Bring
to
it to a point, Steve. Bring it to a point.
To justify my bullshit, And so people, they feel like I can appeal to authority. It's not just me trying to be able to do the kinds of things that I want to do all the time. I have this society of people backing me up. So I must be okay. And it's like, I could say that I can appeal to these authorities, worldly authorities. But then if I look at the Bible and I look at the church and what they're saying is different, which one do I want to choose? And I just feel like, trying to have progress in a timeless thing is an oxymoron, in my opinion. And people will take this in any way they want to that makes them upset, and they don't have to listen to me. But what I really truly feel is if something is timeless, how does it progress? I mean, maybe human beings, their progress changes how they understand it, but I think we are so ignorant as it is that trying to understand what's been understood by better people than me for thousands of years is dangerous. And I also then I ask myself, in my case, look at the fruits, look at what happens around you when you go one way or the other way. And I think the entire Old Testament is about that. I'm sure everybody in those Old Testament stories thought they were righteous, or at least they had an excuse because, gosh, this desert's so difficult to be in or whatever.
All right.
And then they got swallowed up by the earth and stuff like that. So anyway, I just think people need to be way more humble, and then maybe they wouldn't have the anger and the frustration within their families and within their churches,
All right. Yoav, you haven't made it onto our, and you've been giving shekels, which is totally cool. So tell us a little bit about you.
For the purpose of this comment, I'm a color engineer. That's my profession. And I would like to make a comment on my profession. So I'm not making any religious or political comment, just a scientific observation. Nice. And you guys maybe draw the conclusion from it. We were talking about black and white and gray and non-binary color. Color is actually three-dimensional. And please try to forget the connotation of color in your current culture. I'm not talking about that at all. All human cultures, all people in all languages have the concept of black and white. All languages. Some languages don't have the concept of color at all. You cannot ask the question, what color is this thing? You can ask the question, what does it look like? If there is any color term in a language, it is red. Red is the other color. So there is black and white and red.
Interesting.
Now a bit of Hebrew. Adam. The first man is Adam. Adam comes in Hebrew. If you write Adam, is like writing Adom, color red. So Adam is Adom. Man is red. Also connected to blood, dam. Also connected to earth, Adama, which is in my country tends to be of reddish color. So the worldview that emerges, I think it's proto-Semite. I think it comes even before Judaism, is a world in which you have white as good, black as death, always, no matter what your color of skin is. That's the worldview. And humanity is neither black, nor white, nor gray. Humanity is red. End of lecture.
So the Shinto Japanese see it the same way, and they're not even connected in any way to the Middle East in any
They're
way
the
at all.
10
But that's
lost
fascinating that you
tribes.
said that. Yeah,
Get back to
that's
the Mormons.
fascinating.
Oh,
It's like
have you
black,
really not
white,
heard
and
that they're in
red, or like-
America? I mean, do Jeremy and I have to talk about this? I bet we can go on this all day.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to mention one important thing, is the red cow or the red heifer.
Yes.
It's the most obscure commandment in the Torah. And if you understand forgiveness of sin through the red cow as representing us that are red and not black and not white, might give meaning to that chapter.
Wow.
Wow. I just read that last
By the way,
night.
are we all toast? Is like this red calf stuff mean like we're all gonna like? Is the end times here?
Yes, the end times are here. They started 2,000 years ago.
Rats.
So.
I have plans. I just bought
All right.
some stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
that's pretty-
shekels, and thank you for what a wild thing. I'd never heard about any of this before. Well, we've got Jeremy and Grizz. Now Grizz has a screen. Grizz, is this a
I
point
got
of order?
something so awesome that at South of Sunrise made. I think that's right. You have to see it. You have to see it. You ready?
I'm ready. And I want to see God's glory.
Hold on.
And I share, and you
Yeah.
talk back, and I want to see God's glory.
So I just had to share that with you. Today it seemed like a good time. And even though it was right in the middle of your stream, it seemed like a good time to share that with you. I love you. I love you. Bye.
All right, Grim Grizz, I'm going to land the plane. I am going to land the plane by 12:30. But don't worry, there'll be plenty of time to get over to Grim Grizz's channel because he's got 10 minutes of branding before he actually does anything. So, Jeremy.
I was just going to say he's got to give time for the boomers to show up to his stream.
Gen X.
No, Vendonka.
No, I'm Gen X. I'm talking about the boomers.
Vendonka is a bona fide boomer.
Yeah.
So.
No, I just wanted to. I just joined. Honestly, I'm like piggybacking on your stream so that I could connect with Hunter as a fellow former Mormon and fellow Mormon missionary who went through the deconstruction of his Mormonism through an encounter with mysticism and also with philosophy. I just wanted to reach out to him and say, and who went down the road of atheism and occultism and New Age and just tried it all. I tried everything. Tried the self-help movement and everything. None of it works. So anyway, reach out to me, Hunter. We talked in private chat. So
I will, and I'll ping you on
How
mysticism. That's interesting.
How does one reach out? I don't get it. I mean, I click on names and I go to YouTube channels and I don't.
Oh, yeah. No, I put my email in the private chat. So anybody who wants to reach out to me, it's my full name at Gmail. That's it, and I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Okay.
Unless you piss me off, and then I won't be happy to talk to you.
99 at Gmail.
What's that?
Mine is my full name 99 at Gmail. Steve McGee 99 at Gmail.
Do we have any social security numbers or telephone numbers we'd like to give out while we're on the live stream?
I've got
I'll give you the last 6 of my car registration number.
we have Nathan back. Nathan, welcome.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm here. I saw Nathan.
Jacob
Oh my
left
gosh.
when Nathan came on, so I guess I do know what that's about. But Nathan, welcome. Good to see you. How are you? What do you want to say to this crazy business?
Not much. I mean, I do have a stream planned in 15 minutes. I've not come to steal your audience, but I was just like, I'll come here and see what's
going
happening.
head to head with Grim Grizz. I don't know, Nathan.
I'll put the link in the chat. What's the stream about?
It's an open call-in, so I get a lot of comments from people who are upset with my views, and I think that chat is well, chat and commenting is often like really unproductive because I think the constraints that it places on people can lead to them getting more frustrated than they should. and so probably verbal conversations a little bit better for people. So I try to do those if I've had a lot of disagreement around something.
So CW is happy. CW is happy.
Is it about religious things, or what is the nature of the stream?
I mean, technically anything. So in my content in the past few weeks, I've done a bad apologetics episode on the divine hiddenness argument. Some people may call in about that. And I've also done a lot of stuff engaging with like Peter Boghossian's views around like culture war issues and things. So I've had quite a lot of people from his
I've got
audience.
a signed copy of his book if you're interested.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm all right personally, but a lot of his audience have been coming over and kind of commenting where they're quite unhappy with views. So I think just kind of giving them a space to talk, and actually a couple of them have turned out to be okay once they've kind of come to terms with that I'm not like a crazy blue-haired person who wants to hurt them or something. So yeah.
All right.
I'm going to be in Scotland in December,
Check it
Nathan.
out if I can find it.
Yeah, is my channel's Digital Gnosis, and that's evil. Sorry, John, I think, did you say something I couldn't quite hear?
I said I'm going to be in Scotland in December. You want to run an estuary near you?
I mean, I live in London now, so it might be.
Yeah, no, I will be there also in September.
Yeah, if you let me know when you're in London.
Talk to Tayo. He's organizing something.
All right. Yeah, good. So there's our commercial break. You can go to Digital Gnosis, and if you don't like Grim Grizz branding, you can go see Nathan and look at what he's doing. So
Nathan,
Tyler, go ahead, Mark.
I'm just a bit player around here, Nathan, and I'm kind of new, and we've only interacted a little bit on Twitter. But if you'd ever have the inclination and have the time, I'd love to talk to you and do a kind of online discussion. Would you be interested?
Absolutely, yeah. Best ways to contact me. I think I've got an email of some description on my YouTube channel, or message me on Twitter or in my Discord, anything like that. Like,
okay, and does CW have your contact info?
He does, yeah.
Okay, so if you maybe I'll get it from him too if I can't find it otherwise. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, just popping in real quick.
Say a little bit about who you are, because you've got some skin in the CRC game.
Yeah. So serving as I'm serving an international congregation here in South Africa, but in a sense on loan and way from Classis, North Central Iowa. So within the Christian Reformed Church. I'm one of those people that came in from outside. I think I've mentioned that before, but yeah. No, I just wanted to pop in real quick because it's about bedtime here. And just to say on this topic, thinking more on the lines of salvation and maybe tying in a couple of the different threads to the stream, I think the opportunity this gives for conversation about what we're hopeful for, the things that we're excited about, what potential there could be in light of the things that are happening. There's a lot to sort of reflect on. I was grieving last night the fact that I have good friends in campus ministry that are affected by everything going down, and yet I think I'm drawn more into how does this open up the kingdom? How does this open pathways for growth, for flourishing, for opportunity and engagement? And excited to see where things go from here. And the question will be, how do the people who find themselves in those positions of leadership and those who don't, lean into that work going forward.
Okay.
So anyhow, just wanted to pop in to say that. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tyler. Good to see you.
You too.
All right, we're coming down to, we've got 9 minutes left. I'm not going to step on Grizz's live stream or on Nathan's.
Nine.
Michael, did you want to say something when you pop back in?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, almost in the Gerardian sense, right? There's plenty of memes. There's plenty of mimetic patterns, right? But the grappling with reality, as far as I can see it, there is one mimetic pattern that stands above.
This is what I came on to talk about, by the way.
Oh, well, go for it, Hunter.
Well, as I've sort of looked into spaces and like I've thought about the winning meme in particular, like what would allow a meme or a mimetic structure to end up on top? And considering that there must be some. And as I thought about the qualities of that meme that might allow it to sort of spiral to ultimate victory, some of it seemed to point back to interesting doctrines about God, and in particular the Christian doctrines of God, but not 100% either. Like some of it points in directions that I know are not exactly the way at least most Christians think about it. And so it seems to me like one of the factors of the winning meme is that it should be the best at creating coalitions, at somehow turning its supposed enemies into allies or friends. And that even if they think they're enemies of it, it doesn't look at them like that. And when we face obstacles and opposition to something like, let's say, spreading the kingdom, manifesting the fruits of the Spirit on the earth, which I feel are not remotely... I got in a whole couple of talks on your Discord, Paul, with people about this. And my whole contention was, I don't see remotely enough of the Spirit of God or the fruits of the Spirit anywhere. And maybe part of what's missing is when we face opposition, we oppose it back. And is that really the way? Is that the winning strategy? Is that God's strategy? Or is there a sort of more radical love that says all of the things that are wrong that you're opposing us with, you want to look for any amount of light within them? And maybe that's where you start, is you try to find everything about them you can appreciate and love and incorporate into the kingdom. And then you bring in, the judgment. You have to love judgment as well. But maybe we could be making friends with people instead of enemies. And maybe that's why we're not winning the mimetic arms race.
Yeah. Okay. Michael.
Last word and I'll step out. So Jesus encounters people ready to stone a woman for committing adultery, right? So any of you without sin cast the first stone. And then he tells her to go and sin no more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
I'm willing to admit that that I almost never want to do what you were just saying about so there's enemies, there's strife, almost never.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at my level of maturity today, I'm able to not alone just see it, I'm able to start admitting that today. But for most of my life, even if there was this thought in the back of my mind that, Steve, you're what you're doing is self-centered or you're self-willed or whatever, and that's causing your problems, I could at least find people around me who would be on my side and listen to me talk on the phone about how bad everybody is. And then they would be, yeah, those people are bad, that kind of stuff, or change the channel. And they tell me everything I think is right. And it's like, man, what an insurmountable problem to try to get everybody else in the world to start acting like Jesus. And I think maybe, I'm pretty sure if I read what it says, which I haven't even done that yet, but if I do that, I'm pretty sure it's going to say dude, you're not meant to go and make everybody act like Jesus. You could do your best to even try. But like you said too, everything I do is sin, which again, it's not the cop out, but it's the ones that I know, try to stop. And then the ones I'm not willing to admit are sins yet, pray for the grace to be humbled so I can admit, yes, I am sinning. And Jordan Peterson's right. If I clean up my room, somebody else's life is going to be better somewhere. I know that that's true. It's not like some kid in Africa won't starve because I cleaned up my room, but I'm in the world and I do stuff in the world. So, the secular perspective from Peterson on the gospel, I think is relatively sound. Maybe it's not complete enough, but what a great step forward. And man, he really pisses a lot of righteous, good people who are trying to save the world. He really pisses a lot of those people off. And I would wonder, like, well, why are they angry? You know, maybe they could look into themselves. I hear stuff I don't like to hear. It pisses me off. And, you know, I should look at, like, why am I angered by words that people are saying?
All right. We got
Instead of
3 minutes.
instantly loving them and hoping for the best for them. If I'm angry,
love is hard.
what's going
Love
on?
is hard. We got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Takeaways, and then I'm going to land the plane with a little bit of branding here.
Are you borrowing Grizz's branding?
I got my own. Don't you watch my channel, Vindonk?
No, I don't know anything about that. I thought what he produced looked pretty good.
No, I got dog bark. I got an old guy with a harmonica down in.
That's right. I remember now.
You don't like? We just had the low blood sugar blues this morning as intro. I thought that was awesome. Is an old dude like you having more increasing difficulty regulating his body should be getting into this kind of thing.
Okay, all right.
So takeaways from people. Last words, and then we'll send you off. Anybody?
I was just gonna kind of piggyback on what you're saying there, Hunter, on this idea that seems quite radical that Paul says, like, we're sheep being led to the slaughter to be killed all the day long. That is the ideal that's lifted up, that we're to die for the sins of the many, which is a trampling down death by death. That's
when you embrace it.
Mm.
I did a presentation on this, but I mean, touching on Steve's thing as well. I don't know. Maybe the strategy works up and down the scales of reality. And if I try to love things and then I find something within me that doesn't, I go sort of meta, and I don't reject the part of me that can't love. I give love to that. And if there's some resistance to that, I go meta again until I can find whatever sinful part of me that maybe I want to reject, but instead I give it love.
That makes sense.
Like going in the wrong direction in some sense, but it seems like in the long run, I become capable of loving what I couldn't love before.
I'm shocked at how little time it's taken for me to, like, I guess level up would be like the feeble attempt at explaining it, but how little time and how little effort it's taken for me to be pretty changed on some of my attitudes and what I want. It's weird.
It's great.
All right. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to send you packing. Thank you for coming on. Great to see you again, Nathan. Good to see your face.
See you.
And thanks for everybody else who came on. And we will see you later.
Thank you.
Whoops. I think I got them all. And here, which one am I going to pick? Which one am I going to pick? How about, here's an oldie.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
Yeah, walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
Walk
Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord, and hold my hand. Walk with me. You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah. Jesus journey.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk
with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my
Yeah, Lord.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king, and David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.